promised, you and I are going to dig into a conversation about The Mandalorian. We're going to talk about what's good about it, what my concerns are about the show and the future of Disney Star Wars. I was gonna do this a little bit differently, but now what I think I want to do with you is go and just take this sort of episode by episode and talk about this sort of as it's unfolding. But I have to say, this entire conversation is completely starting out in a different way than I thought it was going to, because as you've probably already heard by now, Gina Carano has been fired from the show, basically because of a tweet that she posted. And if you're watching this at this point, you already know more of the details. I'm not going to read the tweet and go, into the weeds on this. You can see this and probably already have on a dozen other websites. But what she posted was basically voicing her concerns about these current trends in American society and media of censorship, of sort of purging from the media and ruining the careers of people, and basically just kind of marking individuals who vocally have a different viewpoint than the Hollywood establishment viewpoint. So she posted a tweet basically saying, hey, this is what I see. And quite frankly, everybody sees it. But as tyrants do over and over again, they just can't help themselves. Disney proved Gina's tweet to be 100% correct by firing her. It sort of reminded me of, if you remember several years ago, a bunch of Islamic killers ran into Charlie Hebdo in France and shot up the place and killed a bunch of people because the cartoonists were pointing out that Muhammad was violent, right? And so basically their response was, yeah, we don't like that, so we're going to kill everybody, basically proving the point of the artists 100% correct. See, here's the thing. Tyrants, they can't help themselves. They have to take the bait every single time, and they don't even see that they're doing it because they're completely blinded by their zealous belief that what they're doing is for your good. And so they've canned Gina, and I think that was a terrible move. It totally proved her point precisely. I am, as many others are now at this point, looking at canceling Disney Plus on these industries that have become so openly antagonistic towards the ideas of freedom of speech and et cetera, et cetera. Before we even begin this conversation about The Mandalorian and what I really have enjoyed about it, I sort of feel like I got to tell you, I don't know that I'm going to continue watching the show because of moves like this on the part of Disney that, quite frankly, have had me concerned for a very long time now about the future of Star Wars and what it is that these people are doing with the story, because this is the kind of people who are at the center of the decision making. And you start to see it cropping up in the conversation through the first couple of seasons when they're having conversations about certain ideas about ethics or morality or specifically religion in general. And of course, these issues have already divided and destroyed the Star Wars franchise. And I can say that because look at the sales of the Star Wars products, the toys and all that stuff coming out of the movies produced by Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams. They've tanked. For the first time in the history of Star Wars, one of their own films tanked, the Han Solo film. So that entire franchise is sort of up for grabs, and it's for precisely the reasons that I'm talking to you about right now. I have a lot more to say on that. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit fired up, but let's put that aside for just a moment and jump into a conversation about Season 1, Episode 1, The Mandalorian. Right out of the gate, I just want to say that some of the things that I would say fall into the plus category on the storytelling of The Mandalorian is that they fully committed in the show to the production value. When you're watching The Mandalorian, you truly feel like you're watching something that is film quality, something that looks and feels like Star Wars. It belongs in the Star Wars universe. The music, the selection and the score, the arrangement of the music that they selected for the show hits all the right notes, no pun intended, because it is kind of a Western feel, but it's not straight up Western, sort of like cowboy gunslinger Western. It has that feel in the music, but it also kind of has this tribal, primal feel in the music that I think goes well with the Mandalorian culture. I don't know if you picked up on those details in the soundtrack, but I did, and I want to say I really appreciated that from those who are involved in scoring and arranging the music. So the production value, big thumbs up on that. I loved how they hit those notes the first time you see the Mandalorian walk into the room. He is played by Pedro Pascal. I think as an actor, Pedro does a great job in the show. A friend of mine was telling me that the Mandalorian is actually played by or portrayed by several people, particularly when it comes to the action sequences and the firearms, the use of firearms and the gunfighting aspects of The Mandalorian. I don't know if that's true. If you do, maybe leave a comment below. If it is true, I kind of feel like I want to, Pedro, I want you to sort of step up the game a little bit. You've got great acting skills, and you're rocking that. Kudos to you. But I'd love to see you grow and develop in those, if that's true that other people are needed to step in to do all these other items. But nevertheless, when you're watching the show, you're seeing some really great stuff there from Pedro. Oh my gosh, Carl Weathers is in the show, and I love it. I love seeing him again. I think your casting director, that was gold. That was pure gold right there in the casting. Werner Herzog, another big win in the cast in this episode as the client. Omid Abtahi does a great job as Dr. Pershing. Oh my gosh, Nick Nolte as the voice of Kuiil. I mean, really, this was great. This was a great choice. The actress who actually gets in the makeup and portrays the character of Kuiil, she does an outstanding job. Misty Rosas. So you see the depth and the detail of some of these things where they take other actors and they sort of, whether it's in the makeup or in post editing or stunts or whatever, and they sort of cobble together. I have to say, the end product that we're watching in The Mandalorian, when you've got to be able to tap talent in different areas, even to sort of coalesce them into one character, whether it's The Mandalorian or whether it's Kuiil, it's fluid and it works. And I just got to say to the production team of The Mandalorian, you've done an awesome job there for those reasons. So like the first scene, right? It opens up and it's sort of this pub or bar type of an atmosphere, and one of the things that you get the feel of is that gritty underworld place that's being walked into. They make use of alien languages and subtitles. I love all that stuff to sort of dig into this sort of other world, other galaxy reality in terms of making this a Western, and the action stuff that we're seeing in the sequences, like when that door closes and cuts the alien in half. Okay, so we're watching Star Wars, but we're watching something that's really focused on underworld sort of layer of society in the Star Wars universe. because of the nature of the characters that we're seeing and the interactions that we're having. The actor who plays Mithril, Horatio Sands, dude, you've got great comedic timing. You're great. You do this character incredibly well. I have to say, I don't really have a lot of complaints after watching season 1 and season 2 of The Mandalorian in terms of casting selection. All of the casting and all of the hires for the show have been doing a really outstanding job, as well as the production team. There are some minor thoughts that I would have on that, some minor critiques, and we'll go into those in future episodes. I think probably the main part of my concerns, critiques, are going to come into the writing, that source material, and why there are certain questions that arise as a result of that. And I would say that one of those immediately has to do with the fact that we, by virtue of the fact that we are focused on a Mandalorian as the main character, we are having a religious conversation. George Lucas, when he created Star Wars, in his conversations openly said that he wanted to have a conversation about God and about faith in the context of the Star Wars universe. And I thought that he did a great job doing that. Star Wars took off and became a part of American culture all through my growing up years. For that reason, that he successfully hit those notes about a story about good versus evil, and good triumphing over evil, and some of the while not digging, super deep on it, but he did discuss in the Star Wars conversation about Star Wars, ideas about faith, that faith sort of reaches into that spiritual realm and can accomplish things that seem impossible. But here in The Mandalorian, okay, we're having a religious conversation, but it's not the Jedi religion, it's the Mandalorian religion, right? One of the initial things that we see come out in the conversation is this idea that people have an idea of what some of the tenets of the Mandalorian religion are. Now, those things aren't explicitly laid out like right out of the gate, like, okay, so here are the sort of 10 commandments of the Mandalorian religion. We're not handed that right out of the gate. We're sort of picking up the pieces as we ride along in the story with Din, the Mandalorian. But one of the initial things that comes out is the question from the character Mithril: is it true that you guys never take off your helmet? So here's something, that we're introduced to, this idea of this sort of religious vow of secrecy, a religious vow of, isolation of a certain kind, separation that's involved in the Mandalorian religion. And this is another thing, and I'm so glad that they gave this to the actor Horatio Sands. It's in this very first episode, right out of the gate, he said, "I was hoping to be free for a life day." Did you pick up on that in the script? I loved it. I got a chuckle out of that because I actually watched the Star Wars Christmas special when it aired on television a million years ago. And so I love that they slipped that kind of stuff in. There's a lot of those little sort of Easter eggs that are sort of buried in those little references all over the place. Din is now having a conversation with Grief, played by Carl Weathers. He's sort of the bounty hunter boss who issues the pucks to all those who want to go out and take on a job. And they're talking about the fact that Din is wanting more jobs. He wants to make more money. And Grief says, "I don't have something that, can offer as much as you're looking for. Here's one, not much, 5,000. To which Din replies, "That won't even cover the cost of fuel these days." So in the Star Wars universe, we're in episode 1, right out of the gate, we are introduced to this idea that in the Republic, the restored Republic, that Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and C-3PO and R2 and all the rest of the heroes sacrificed and suffered and fought for, that things aren't going well. That the price of gas has gone up. which I think is sort of ironic since the price of gas is actually going up as we're talking about this. But my concern here is that right out of the gate, they're introducing this idea that the people who restored freedom to the galaxy from the Empire basically don't know how to take out the trash. They don't know how to run a government. And things are falling apart. My concern here, which I think would be obvious to you if you've watched any of my previous videos discussing Star Wars, is, or what has become of Star Wars under the Disney umbrella, is that basically this idea would go to reinforce some of the things that Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams brought to the table in their subversive storytelling about Star Wars, that the heroes that you loved and celebrated were actually all failures, and everything that you thought you knew about Star Wars was wrong, and all of this. That sort of a line sort of stood out to me as a red flag, like, okay, so they're building up a storyline that would mesh with this train wreck that has already happened. That was concerning. When the set building, now I read an article that said, some of the set pieces, for obvious reasons, were actually done with these sort of live screen technology that was happening, but there are some set pieces that are obviously built that the actors have to interact with. And I just want to say, again, to your production value, your set builders, your costume designers, all of that stuff really looks great. The sort of throwback to Return of the Jedi with that sensor eye that pops out of the door. Here was a question that I had, as soon as the Mandalorian takes on this new job. Obviously this is some sort of a splinter group or whatever from the remnants of the Empire. I think it was really interesting to me that the stormtroopers were still in their stormtrooper armor. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, for obvious reasons, I think it certainly makes it shorthand, an easy way to sort of visually identify who the bad guys are by putting them in stormtrooper armor. But I feel like it would have felt more real to a certain degree. Bear with me here for a second while I explain this. If the stormtroopers, even if they were loyal to this Empire idea of trying to rebuild it, would have shed that armor for obvious reasons. Now that the Empire is actually destroyed and broken, and the galaxy has been, returned to the hands of a republic style of government, if you are a student of history, then you will know that in those kinds of scenarios, a lot of times those who were working, let's say, for like the Axis powers, right, would have shed their uniforms to sort of try to blend in, even if they still were subscribed to the ideas of their failed attempt at, global domination. They didn't want to be identified or marked by what they were wearing. So I thought that was an interesting choice to sort of keep the stormtroopers in their armor. Maybe it was, you just felt like from a production side that would have been too subtle, but I feel like it would have felt more real if they had not been in armor, but maybe had some other sort of way to identify that they were loyal to the Empire. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud. I'm just telling you what my sort of impressions watching this first episode. When the client says this, he's now, the Mandalorian is having this conversation with the client, played by Werner Herzog. Again, an excellent choice for someone working, sympathizing with the Empire, wanting to see it restored. The client says the Beskar belongs back into the hands of a Mandalorian. It is good to restore the natural order of things after a period of such disarray, don't you agree? See, I love this character. He played it to the nines. He was great in the role because he's coming out with that philosophical intent right? And I like the sort of chess piece, the mental chess game that he is playing in this conversations. I got a chuckle out of the, salacious crumb little creatures in the market they were selling to eat. When the Mandalorian leaves and he takes the Beskar and he brings it to the armor, it's one of the first times that we're really starting to dig a little deeper into the Mandalorian religion, into their thought process, into their philosophy. They seem to identify in a tribal way. And here's a question I had. When the armorer says, "Has your signet been revealed?" And Din says, "Not yet." And the armorer replies, "Soon." So I had a question about that. And I guess if you're watching this, what I think they're talking about is something that comes up later on, and that is they would sort of assign a signet to certain parts of the armor based on some merit or some deed that the Mandalorian had accomplished, and then that piece would be marked with the signet, earning that piece of armor. I believe that's what they're talking about here, but I'm not 100% sure, which is why I had a question about it. Jump in if you know that detail. Here's another aspect of the religion conversation. The excess will sponsor many foundlings. That's good. I was once a foundling. I know. So it seems to be a part of the Mandalorian religious ideal that they raise up the next generation in the steeped in the Mandalorian beliefs and perspective and code, and that the existent Mandalorians sponsor that. They pay for that. They fund it. One of the things that the show, in terms of its style, is that it wants to create this sort of Western feel to it, and I think that they definitely accomplish that. Of course, one of the sort of clear identifiers we get right here in episode 1 is we see the Mandalorians break in a horse, which is a blurg. It's an alien, but it's basically a horse. It's a workhorse, and he breaks it there in the ring, bringing home that idea of the cowboy, the Western, the rugged individual. Kuiil brings a challenge here to the Mandalorian while they are sort of breaking the horses, and the Mandalorian, he's having a difficult time with it, and he says, "I don't have time for this. Do you have a land speeder or something else?" And Kuiil challenges him directly on the basis of the fact that he's a Mandalorian. So Kuiil is yet another sort of person who has some working knowledge of what the Mandalorians are about, what their philosophy is about. And he says this: "You are a Mandalorian. Your ancestors rode the great mythosaur. Surely you can ride this young foal." He's challenging him. He's using his identity, his religion, and his culture as a way to say, step up to what it is that you believe in and the ideals you adhere to. And he does. He rises up. He measures up to, in this episode, he measures up to the Mandalorian identity. And I think that's important that we see him doing that. Obviously, the writers think it's important as well, right? Kuiil says this: "I have never met a Mandalorian. I've only read the stories. If they are true, you will make quick work of it. Then there will again be peace. I have spoken," right? And Kuiil is basically making the point here in episode 1 that true peace is only possible when men of war exist. Quite frankly, I agree with Kuiil on this point, and I think that was well stated. One of the things that I love about this first episode is we get to see an IG unit in action. In this case, IG-11 was a lot of fun to watch in this first episode, and his interactions with the Mandalorian were very entertaining, and I really like that they brought that they chose that character to bring into the show. I love that they could incorporate some comedy into their action sequences, like when it says we just need to get the door open, and both of them kind of, silently look back at the big gun. That was great, little sort of comedic note there in the action. The visual, make a note here on your production team, your lighting, your camera crew. I guess maybe drawing from some of the, perhaps some of the art that was done. There's something else I want to say about the show. In the post sort of credits, we get treated to the wealth of artists that are involved with the storytelling, and it's awesome. You have some great artists. But in this particular scene, once they blast through the door, the Mandalorian and the IG unit, and they chose to show them coming in just sort of as silhouettes. That was a great camera angle choice. It was so stinking cool. I know it's not really a big part of the story, but I just want to say those little details, I noticed those things, and you're doing a great job making the story just look and feel really cool. Okay, my biggest question at the conclusion of episode 1 is why? The Mandalorian, this is not his first job. Cannot be the very first time in the scope of his career that he's tracked down somebody, and the accusations or the reasons why this person was a wanted person were ambiguous or nefarious or shady, however you want to say that. But in this case, he makes a choice to shoot the robot in the head and spare this child. The big question, of course, that they leave us at the end of the episode is, why? Why does he choose that? Why does the Mandalorian make that choice? And that question is going to come up throughout season 1 and through season 2. Of course, we are shown in flashbacks that he himself was saved by Mandalorians when he was a child. Is that the only reason? I want to leave you with that. Leave some comments below if you caught things I didn't, or if you agree or disagree or have other thoughts or concerns about episode 1. We'll pick it up next time with episode 2. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.